Back in English. We are back now for the next session with Tanguy Detroz. Hello, Tanguy.
Hi.
Tanguy is an engineer specialized in energy. At the very beginning of the internet and the infancy of IoT, Internet of Things, you understood the huge opportunity to connect buildings, to make them communicate and get energy consumption information. And you founded DAPESCO in 2002. Of course, DAPESCO has evolved over the years, and it is now a comprehensive management platform about energy. It is used by more than 30,000 buildings in several countries. And just 2 months ago, DAPESCO has joined Metron, has been acquired by Metron, a French cleantech company specialized in energy efficiency and improvement of industrial performance. And you support the greening of more than 100 international industrial groups throughout their digital evolution. Tanguy, can you talk to us about technical solutions that IT can bring to minimize the environmental footprint of organizations?
Yep. Do you all see my screen? Is that okay?
Yep, thank you.
That's okay. So indeed, I am now under the hood not only of sustainable IT, but also of Metron. So briefly, and in a few words, Metron is a French tech a startup created in 2013. We are about 200 people, a little bit less today, and we hire. So if you are interested to put your resources and brains into saving the planet, let's say, we will be delighted to talk with you. Just before I jump into the matter of what we do at Metron and at DAPESCO, just a few reminder of only what happened this year. You all saw those images, those terrific images from both Belgium, Germany, the US, Canada, and other countries, unfortunately, where we see that climate change is no longer something that will happen. It's already happening today. And even with the COP21 and all those conferences and blah, 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 and blah, 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 where people say we have to change something before 2050, unfortunately, what we see is that we will not have to wait until 2050 to get things done. So my view and the idea behind Metron and behind DAPESCO that I started 20 years ago is based upon three things, three major convictions, maybe not beliefs, but convictions that we have. The first one is that human people can achieve great things when they are put together. When you look at what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX or what Richard Branson did with Virgin, I don't say that those people did it right in terms of ecology or in terms of saving the planet, but they've been able to build something. And when you look at the similarity in those companies, you all see that they have a very big diversity of profiles. We all need, and we are convinced at Metron that we need people from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different regions. Metron is today a company with less than 200 people, but we have more than 27 nationalities into those people. And that brings a unique and incredible fostering of intelligence, of cultures, of ways of looking at problems. So that's the first thing. We need people, and we need a very, very vast diversity of people. Two, and that's my conviction since I was a student, energy has never been considered as it should have been. When you see the evolution of the technologies in the last, let's say, 200 years, we have been using steam, we have been using oil, we have been using coal. The availability has never been put in question. With a few exceptions, most of the industry has been working on the fact that energy is available. And today we see that whether it's linked to the oil or gas resources, whether it's linked to the availability of rare metals in batteries like lithium or cobalt or all these things, we see that the scarcity of energy has never been taken into account. So we have been used to overspill and not use in a decent way the energy. And we currently see that this has an impact not only on the climate, but also on people. The third thing is that the problems that we have to face now have become so complex that without IT solutions, we will probably not be able to solve them. If we say to the people, you take a cold shower in the morning, you go by bike to the office, if you go to the office, you stop traveling and so on, okay, that will have an impact, but that impact will be too limited. Okay, that impact will not be sufficient to solve the problems we are facing now. So we need other solutions, industrial solutions at a global scale, and we strongly believe that those solutions can only come with the help of IT resources. And if I talk about energy-related complexity, I was talking about getting energy from somewhere, and people usually say, okay, the energy is available, just open the valve and you would get either oil or gas or water, whatever. But if you look at what happens today, we need to take into account the weather, because the wind has an impact, the sun has an impact. We need to be able to forecast both the energy production and our energy needs. We need to take into account the network congestion, which is the fact that if everybody in the same street either has PV panels, so photovoltaic panels on its roof, and they all produce the same day because it's very sunny and there is nobody to take the energy in that street, well, that may be a problem for the transformer in the road in the vicinity. So the network congestion becomes a problem today because of these multiple sources that we have all over the place. If on top of that you add the problem of the batteries, the storage, the electrical mobility, and the fact that each time you have to charge a car, you need a lot of energy in the shortest time possible, well, that also will have an impact on the way the network is used. If on top of that, you want to add biosources of energy, hydrogen, all kind of new energy sources that you can imagine and that we will imagine in the future. And if on top of that, you add the fact that you want to buy the energy at the lowest price, whether it's a spot price or a price day per day or a long-term price, you see that the energy-related complexity becomes huge. And all those things, all those aspects, if you take them one by one, it's not very complex. But if you want to take them all at once, that becomes a real headache. And if you want to do that on a real-time basis, then you understand that IT is the only way to get through that endeavor, through that problem. And I'm just talking on that slide about the energy-related complexity. Now, if you multiply this complexity by the complexity of your process, whether it's an industrial process, whether it's an office that you are running, a bank, an airport, an hospital, you will need to include in that process everything that is related to heating, to cooling, to moving things from place one to place B, from crunching material, from crunching plastics, from crunching stones, whatever you need to do. And you will see that there is a huge amount of relations between what you want to do and how it has to be done. The impact of compressed air, the impact of lighting, the impact of heating, the impact of cooling, all those things together make the project or what you want to optimize even more complex. So if you take the complexity of the energy world multiplied by the complexity of the process that you are running, well, then you understand that without IT, just forget it. In previous time, let's say 20, 30, 40 years ago, when a building, when a supermarket, when a hospital, when, let's say, an industrial activity was started, people tried to commission it when they started the activity. And there was a review of the programs of the PLC, of the system, how it works, every X months. We said, okay, we are now going into summer mode, so we have to change the settings. And then 3 months later, we were getting back to winter mode, and we have to change the settings. Today, when you look at how a building is managed, it's almost like an aircraft. It's a real-time control. There is somehow an autopilot that looks at the lighting, the air conditioning, the heating, the cooling, all those things are managed in real time or almost real time. And that is a good thing. That is a good thing because that allows us to reduce the energy consumption for the same comfort. But that doesn't take into account all the external factors that I was mentioning. The price, the availability of the energy for tomorrow, whether it will be sunny or windy. Does that impact the availability? Does that impact the price? If yes, how can I impact my production? And we see in some countries like Germany, where they have a lot of windmills and solar panels, some days the prices for energy is negative. Okay, that means that they pay you to use energy because they cannot store it. But that has a tremendous, or may have a tremendous impact on how you adapt your production. Knowing that if the cost of energy is very low, you can increase the amount of production, and the opposite is to reduce production when the price is high. What was done, by the way, during the day period and the night period over time, but now it has become really a real-time energy management just based upon the price trigger. Sorry. So what do we do at Metron and at DAPESCO? Well, we collect data. That's the first thing we do. We collect a huge amount of data, whether it's linked to a large number of buildings, or whether it's due to an important, significant industrial plant, where we may have hundreds of sensors, energy meters, water meters, temperature sensors, pressure, flow, whatever the type of information. We collect those data, and we get a value every X second, X minute. We get a value of all these parameters. Just to give an idea, for some of the biggest plants that we follow, we have about 100 million of data every day flowing in. So it's a huge amount of data. We need to organize and validate those time series, those data. And in order to do that, we use artificial intelligence mainly for three things. One is to detect anomalies, and detect anomalies means detecting the fact that the installation is not working in the best way, based upon the history. That allows us also to have some predictive maintenance and identify problems that probably will occur in the future. That also allows us to simulate behaviors. If I am in a company that produces chocolate, I could say, well, if I reduce the melting temperature by 2 degrees, what will be the impact on the need for compressed air, the need for heating, the need for cooling afterwards? And those things can be easily simulated by the fact that we have a huge amount of historical data. And based on those two things, we are then able to improve the process and to reduce the energy consumption. We do that in plants like, for example, for Danone in more than 100 sites across the globe. We do that for public buildings, including in Brussels, in the Walloon region. We do that in France with supermarkets and hypermarkets. So those things can be applied to virtually any type of building, whether it's a school, whether it's an airport, whether it's an hospital, whether it's an industrial plant, whatever. Now, getting back to the theme of today, which is the artificial intelligence, the curve that you see on the screen is simply consumption or power, let's say, at night, and then over day, you see that we are going from, let's say, 50 to 100, and then getting back to the level at night. Let's say it's a supermarket, you have night consumption, only the fridges, then you have the day consumption with more air conditioning and lighting, and then you get back to only the fridges at night. Good. When we talk about sensors, meters, data communication, and so on, there will be problems. I've been in that business for 20 years. I know no solution who has no problem in getting data. The data might be wrong, too high, too low, it might be missing, whatever. So you will have somehow a gap in the data that you receive. Well, in that case, you say, well, it's not difficult. If I have a gap in the data, I just interpolate, and that's roughly correct. Now, if I do the same thing, and that's the same profile, but over a full week, starting on Monday and ending on Sunday, if I have a gap during 3 or 4 days and I interpolate, well, you easily can imagine that the data that I'm getting is completely wrong, and that all my assumptions, all the analysis that I will make will be wrong too. So by using AI algorithm and methods for reconstruction, we are now able to say, okay, if I have a gap, and you see the blue line would be removed, it can be replaced by the green one. And the green one is not just a copy of last week, because last week could be, for example, a holiday, or last week could have a temperature which was completely different from the temperature today. So the AI allows us to go back into the past and make multiple correlations with the number of people, the temperature, the day of the week, the outside temperature, the needs in the stores, blah, 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 blah. You can imagine all kind of parameters in order to let you reconstruct the data, because at the end of the game, if the data that flows in is not correct, and that happens, all the analysis you will make will not be correct either. So in order to fill gaps, there are, and I don't go into too much details, 3 methods that we use. One is interpolation. You draw a line, very easy, but not always true. The second one is using an algorithm developed by Facebook called Prophet. And this one is very good when you use time series and you want to make so-called pattern recognition. Okay, that will allow you to recreate the profile. Eventually, you could do that with external parameters as well. And then the third method is called the random forest, which is a way where you take, let's say, at the top of the tree, you ask question. The first question could be for a supermarket: is the supermarket open or closed? If it's open, you go to the left. If it's closed, you go to the right. And when you go to the left, the next question could be, okay, the store is open, but is it in the winter or in the summer? And you will build a decision tree which is based upon a lot of questions that are automatically raised by the system, and that will tell you at the end of the tree, well, the expected consumption on that moment is 100 or 50 or 200 or 300 kilowatts, whatever. But those random forest algorithms allow you to take into account both internal and external parameters, like the temperature, like the number of people, like anything, in order to get down to the real expected value for the energy consumption. And based on that, we are able to identify misuse of energy. Now, those methods, and I will take 4 more minutes on that, those methods will not bring you anywhere if you don't add some human intelligence. I have been working with AI for a couple of years now. I have been very disappointed by the fact that if you put figures, you get nothing. If you don't put something, some way for the algorithms, for the servers, for the IT stuff to work with, rules of the game, they will not be able to help you. This is what we call ontologies. Ontologies are, let's say, the rule of the game. When we talk about energy, we have to follow rules, physics, thermodynamics, process, whatever. And to illustrate that, just look at what stands behind in the below, sorry, in the screen. You all understand that if you put more heat into a water bucket, the temperature of that water bucket will increase. Okay, that's a correlation, simple correlation. You see the matrix on top. More heat, more temperature. That's true, but that's only true. And I get back to your lessons of physics when you were younger. That's only true between 1 degree Celsius and 99 degrees Celsius. Because when you reach the 99 degrees Celsius, or let's say the boiling temperature, well, even if you put more heat, the temperature will not increase until all the water is transformed into steam, and then and only then the temperature will increase again. And the same process occurs when you reduce the temperature below 1 degree. Until all the water is not frozen, you will not be able to decrease the temperature. And this is a very simple way to describe what an ontology is. The ontology is how will parameter A be affected by parameter B in the process we are talking about. It can be a nuclear power plant, it can be a cooling system, it can be a heating system, whatever. There are ontologies. And the good news is that the physical law do not change like the human laws. So those ones have been defined, have been demonstrated, and are still valid. As soon as you can put them into the AI algorithm, then you can make step forwards. Those ontologies, that's typically what we do at Metron. We combine both energy experts, the data that we collect, and this artificial intelligence with the ontologies. And that allows us to have what we call the machine learning that will analyze the process of some specific machines in plant A, in plant B, in plant C, and that will allow us to discover errors, misfunctions in another plant, in another country, whatever the type of industry we are talking about. And the idea of Metron is really to get the data from all those machines, make those ontologies, discover the best practices, and apply them on the bad students, let's say, in the classroom. So to summarize all that, you have pros and cons both for artificial intelligence leaders, companies that develop software solutions specifically for AI, but not linked to a specific process or way of working. In our case, that's energy. And at the other side, you have those energy leaders who have a lot of knowledge in the energy process, but not necessarily the competencies to use the data generated by the systems. And at Metron, what we try to do is to remove the cons of both worlds and combine all the competencies that are needed to allow us to really make the best use out of the data that we collect in order to reduce the energy consumption and the CO2 emissions, which is only one part of the solution. We know that CO2 storage, decarbonation is a much wider problem than just reducing the energy consumption, but those are things we are working at. So that's our footprint today. If you are in other countries or if you would like to help us to provide this in different countries, feel free to drop me an email and I will be glad to help you. Any question, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Tanguy, for this enlightening talk. For me, it's really good to see that ICT can also bring solutions, because I see most of the time negative aspects due to the work I'm in at the moment. It's reassuring to see that if we decide to act, and we can use our IT skills as well for the greater good. One of the things that we discussed this morning was the complexity of collecting so much data and not collecting too much data. So there was a talk by Simon this morning on eco-design, and he's asking in the chat the question, maybe you can see it as well. As the complexity increases, IT is required because humans are unable to cope with it. Yet, to build the knowledge so that it is able to predict work and work with it, we need to create the rules for everything, every behavior, every condition. How do you tackle such an amount of work?
With talent. With talent. We hire people that are really dedicated and were, let's say, brilliant in their way to analyze all this data. And that was my first belief, remember in the orange slides. We need people with diverse competencies. We need front-end, back-end, physicians, thermodynamics expert, people driving with the data, storing the data. The variety of profiles that we have at Metron is huge. It's huge, and it's only 200 people today.
You mentioned about diversity, and there was a comment from Delphine when you mentioned that she said diversity is not only about nationalities, it's also about backgrounds, genders, age, life experience, etc. And I know for a fact that at DAPESCO, at least, I don't know yet Metron so much, but that you are really looking at that kind of diversity, not just nationalities, but really everything.
No, it's much more than nationality, much more.
You agree with the
Oh, definitely, 200%.
She also mentioned, that's more of a remark, but it's interesting, I think, to mention it on the stage. What you described about process complexity for energy is close to multimodality in the transportation world. It's a complex system that requires a holistic approach. I guess that your kind of system could work for other things, actually, than energy.
Definitely, and when we talk about logistics or we talk about transportation, some of the rules, some of the ontologies that we have developed for a thermal or thermodynamic process could be used in those worlds. The thing is today within Metron we have decided to remain focused on kilowatt hours, let's say energy, but we are definitely convinced that our platform could be used in other worlds for similar needs in terms of tools.
Okay. Another question was, how does Metron evaluate its own environmental impact, and do you have processes to reduce it?
We do. The first thing that we have done was to make sure that the process that we create does not pollute more than what we save. And in most of the case, in every case, because we have done the exercise both at DAPESCO and at Metron, when you look at the amount of energy that is used by our customers, we are talking in megawatts installed based on some plants, tens of megawatts in some refineries and so on, compared to a couple of kilowatts on the servers. So the impact is very, very, very limited compared to the savings. But that's indeed something that we are working on. And for example, all the testing environment, which is not used during the weekend, is switched off. It's negligible in absolute values, but it reminds to all the people within the company that even that can be done.
Yeah, but you also, I remember a discussion we had on the topic, and where you said that it was difficult to explain to, or at least to integrate for the young developers joining the company. They are so used to transmitting data all over the place all the time, and reminding them that actually we can be more efficient in terms of data transfer, collection of just the right type of data, etc., collection of points in time, or at least reducing the amount of data that you need to keep, for example. You mentioned it was a challenge that you try really to tackle within the company as well.
Yeah. We have to remain aware that it's not, we should not reproduce with IT the wrong things we have done with energy. We have considered energy as being, how to say that, not limited. You open the valve and there is something coming out of the crane, out of the valve, sorry. With the IT today, we all have a smartphone and we all see and send pictures and blah, blah. That takes a lot of bandwidth. That takes a lot of volume of data. And we have to remain aware, and that's the good news when you become a little bit older, like in my case. When I started, we had no Wi-Fi. There was no ADSL connection. So we were using analog modems to transmit data. And at that time, we had about, let's say, 100 to 1,000 less bandwidth than today. So this is something that I have to remind to the younger people.
Yep.
But it just remind them it's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you. We are just on time. There's a couple more questions in the chat. What I suggest is if you can maybe have a look at it during the next session. One of them is about, actually the question is kind of, what's the balance between all the things about buildings compared to IT? In this case, we know that buildings and heating and also transports are the two key elements of greenhouse gas emissions, and that IT plays a role somewhere like 4% or something like that worldwide. So that gives already an indication that usually an IT solution that can help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions in other places is a good thing, but I'll let you answer in the chat in more details.
I'll do that.
I will end this session. Thank you again, Tanguy.
Thank you.
For everyone, we'll be back in a second with Carole, Patrick, and Hervé. Don't switch off. You'll be transferred to the networking session for a few seconds.